Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to do an analysis of the show Ted Lasso from a binge-worthy TV perspective. Now, let me just tell you why we're doing this at this point. They haven't announced another episode yet or any of that, or a season yet, but something just happened in our house. I came in 2 days ago, and my daughter is sitting there. And she's going through looking for shows. And of course, there's almost nothing on at the present moment. So there's nothing new. And she looked at Ted Lasso and she says, "What is this?" And I said, "Oh, it's an interesting show. It's worth watching." And so I sat down and watched the first episode with her. I then got up, went back to work, doing a bunch of other things. I think it was about 6 or 7 at night whenever we started. And I came back about 3-4 hours later, and she was on episode 7. She ended up staying up that night until she finished the entire first season. Now, that, by the way, is what binge-worthy is about. Once somebody starts watching, they can't stop. And that's because of how the show is written. So I thought, let's just take another look at it. By the way, I'll tell you something else. This show holds up really well the second time around. I was surprised. I already knew what was coming up. I knew what was happening, but I was still deeply engaged. So today, first, we're going to talk about bringing comedy together with intrigue. If you didn't notice it, this show actually has a lot of intrigue. The only reason people wouldn't notice it is because they were just involved, in the comedy and the characters and what was happening. I'll walk you through the 5-star model for creating binge-worthy TV. Then we'll do an analysis of the pilot based on that. And you probably saw this in one of the emails we sent out. Ted Lasso has had 61 Emmy nominations and 11 wins, which is pretty incredible, especially for a show about somebody just being nice. That's astounding. Then we'll talk about the upcoming class, the binge-worthy TV class that can take your writing to an incredible level. It is beyond what almost any TV class out there presents, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So first, this whole thing about binge-worthy. And this was a term that came out, like 5-6 years ago with the streamers. And we spent a lot of time analyzing it. So here's the first part. By the end of the pilot, somebody watches your pilot. By the end of it, they're committed to watching every episode of the season. This is different than the old model. If you've ever had somebody recommend a show and say, well, it'll take you a couple of episodes to catch on. Or I had somebody recommend this one show and they said, well, watch at least 3 episodes and you'll fall in love with it. And it's like, unless that's absolutely necessary, I'd say, what if you just did it this way? What if you just created something that by the end of the first episode, people were committed to? And you guys know you've experienced that before, where you're just trying out a show and you get to the end of the first episode and you're going to watch everything. And that's what we're doing here. Second, it causes that I must see the next episode to find out what happens experience. So yes, most shows have cliffhangers at the end, but your job is to do more than that. It's to set it up so that it's not just the cliffhanger that has them doing this. They're already, by the end of the first episode, the pilot, they're already engaged and they're already going to do this if you've done it right. Third, the show creates an obsession to keep watching episode after episode after episode. So let me walk you through how it does those 3 things. So this is our 5-star model on this. First thing, you've got a big picture hook. And this is important from two perspectives. One, if you're trying to sell your pilot and your TV series, you need this. You need to do more than just tell them about the characters. You need some kind of major hook that they know, and I'm talking producers, that they know that they can sell it to a streamer or to a funding source or a distributor, right? So the big picture hook, this is really kind of a combination of three things. It's what's the high concept of your show? What's the intriguing world? And this, again, a lot of times people will create a show in a world that we've already seen a lot of. If you can find a way, what's a subworld, a sub part of that world that is incredibly intriguing, it might make all the difference for you. And then third, what's the engaging journey? Now, I'm going to walk you through all of these with Ted Lasso. Just wanted you to know what we were looking at. Then it's about the intriguing character, right? And this means a character that has more going on under the surface than above the surface. So it's easy to write a character that is surface and then has a little bit of depth. But here we're talking about how do you make them intriguing on a much, much deeper level? How do you give them secrets, moral issues, unpredictability that keep an audience engaged? Third, we then call this empathy distress. And this, by the way, came from a psychological analysis of TV shows that caused audiences to be so hooked they couldn't stop thinking about it. So let me just talk about empathy on this. In the 1990s and 2000s, likability of your characters was incredibly important. And they focused almost entirely on that when you talked about characters. If your characters weren't likable, your show had no chance. But we're in a whole different world now. If you saw the show Succession, for instance, none of those lead characters were likable. Most of them were someone that you just went, wow, I wouldn't want to be around that person. But the show was a huge success, and people fell in love with that show, even though they didn't really like the characters. And over time, they came to connect with them. But the reason that we stayed with it was because they created a lot of empathy for those characters, right? We felt for them. I had characters in that show that I didn't like, but I worried about during the day. It was astounding. So what this means is you're essentially putting your characters in some kind of distress that causes us to have that feeling that we need to help them, right? We need to rescue them. We need to know if they're okay. And that is much deeper than just likability. Now, fourth, layers and open loops. So I won't talk about open loops because that takes a lot longer to explain, but let me just go to layers. I'm sure you're familiar with these. There's a couple of different kinds of layers: character layers or plot layers, which means there is a whole different meaning going on under the surface that the audience is going to discover in the midst of a reveal. Now, when we're talking about layers, most people just talk about that meaning. The other part is how you reveal it. If you're going to reveal just in one character explaining their deeper layer to another, that is the weakest way you can do it. Please, anytime you're doing reveals, please be careful about having it be focused mostly around the dialogue. What you want to do is set up intriguing reveals that shock us in some way and have it be an experience for the audience. If you can do that, your reveals and the layers that they uncover will have a deep impact on your audience, and it'll make a huge difference. Open loops, we'll talk about another time, or inside the class if you come into the class. Then number 5 is inviting obsession. And what this means essentially, and let me just say this beforehand. When we started working with this, our development team, there were some people in there who were like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to make people obsessed with something, right? It's like, that's not necessarily a good thing. But listen, the whole purpose of these shows is to keep people entertained and keep people engaged. And if you can get them to the point where they're obsessed, they're going to watch every single episode and they're going to love it. And in fact, what I'll tell you is the shows that we're obsessed about are the ones that we care about, that we talk about, that we tell people on social media, they got to watch this, right? They're the ones that I'm talking about, those kinds of things. They're ones that are worth us thinking about. Once you get used to those kinds of shows, when you see a show that doesn't invite obsession, you just go, I don't really care. It's not at the same level, right? And part of the whole obsession thing is about having people be able to look at something else besides all the issues and problems that are in their lives. So obsession in general, I'll just give you a couple of things here. One is you create a mystery that absolutely has to be solved. And by the way, this is a comedy, but there are mysteries in it. The other is you create those kinds of deep questions that the only way to answer them is to watch the future episodes. And those are just 2 of about 5 or 6 different ways we have of creating obsession. But again, if you can get an audience obsessed, first, your TV show is going to have so much more success. You're going to have so much more word of mouth out there. You are going to have people excited about season 2, season 3, season 4, season 5. And that makes a huge difference. It means your show doesn't get canceled. So this is, in this day and age, you are competing against shows that are doing this. If you do this too, you have a much, much better chance of success. Let's see how it plays out with Ted in just a moment here. So if you understand this on a deep level, this is really true. You'll be able to do almost anything in TV. Right? This is what audiences need. It's what streamers need. It's what producers need. It's what distributors need. They need loyal audiences who can't stop talking about the show. So this is incredibly important. The mystery of this show, or of today's conversation, actually, how do you write a comedy as a binge-worthy TV show? Because most comedies aren't written that way. Most comedies are written as something that, yes, you love them, and you come back from time to time. And it's like, that's different than what we're doing here. So let's go to Ted Lasso. First, the comedy. And we'll look at this from this perspective, and then we'll go to the intrigue. So he's clearly a fish out of water in a pretty big way. He's in a new country, a new sport, new team, new audience. Everything is different to him. As an incongruent character, he is consistently interacting in an over-the-top positive way. In fact, when I first saw the pilot, I thought, wow, this is just too weird. After you get used to who Ted is, you're going to fall in love with this. And he's being positive while being trashed. He is an American football coach with an English soccer team. The only thing the two have in common is the word football, but it means one thing in one country and another thing in another country. He's in incongruent situations. He's being used and tricked while being told the opposite. And again, if you haven't watched it, if you have watched it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched it, I'll explain it in a moment. And then there's all kinds of misinterpretations going on. English words that have different meanings than American words. And there's so many having to do with insults that you'll, again, watch the show and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, big picture hooks. The concept itself. An American football coach is brought to England to coach a pro soccer team, not knowing that he is being used to destroy the team. That's absolute opposites. It's an ironic concept. It also is designed for comedy, and it's designed to have us feel for this guy. It's designed for empathy. How does Ted survive this conspiracy? You know, and the big question of the show, in today's world of deception, misinformation, and underhanded strategies, can you succeed by being a good person? You know, and all you have to do is look at the news for 3 minutes and you see all of this stuff. No matter which side you're on, you're experiencing it. So it's kind of important. Can you survive by being a good person? It's addressing a moral issue that's happening in our lives today. Will this survive this dark world? So now, intriguing character. More on the surface than under. Here's Ted. Here's his boss. Her name is Rebecca. Rebecca hires this new coach for one reason: for him to fail. That's pretty hardcore. From an intrigue perspective, she is so positive and friendly. She says, well, let me give you a tour. This is his first day, his first minutes there. He just got off the plane. Let me give you a tour. She walks him through and they look at some trophies and some nice things like that. And then she says, and of course you'll have to talk to the press. And he says, yeah, after a couple of days of getting a good night's sleep, yes. And then she walks him straight into a press conference. And there's 50 different media people sitting there. This whole thing has been planned in advance, you know, and from that point on, she is continually sabotaging him. So even if Ted did all the right things, she is designing this for him to be a miserable failure. She later on says she was hoping that he was humiliated, you know, and that it ultimately caused the team's failure. So she's got a scheme going on, right? So after she then presents, by the way, a positive vision to the press, she tells the press that Ted Lasso may be the best thing for this club. Then she tells Higgins, her number 2 person, Ted Lasso is going to help me burn this place to the ground. And now we find out that she's got this covert agenda. It's not about Ted. It's about her ex-husband. She wants to destroy the team to get back at him. And it's not just her. She wants to destroy the team. Higgins, you know, he wants it to succeed, but he doesn't want this guy as a coach. The team doesn't want him. The media doesn't want him. The city, they're all committed to his failure. It's like, you know, how does somebody survive that? Then we go to empathy, which a lot of what I just talked about actually also is that. Ted's a total fish out of the water, and he's constantly being put in these difficult situations. So he is instantly shown the deep end, right? He's shoved in to a press conference, which would be just doing a major press conference would be scary enough. But going into this situation where he knows almost nothing, it's like that press conference is astoundingly horrible experience. He quickly blows it with the entire country, so that one moment turns into a million times what it is at that point. I want to give you a quote that comes from Trent. So the first time Trent stands up, this is in the very, very, very beginning of the press conference. He says, "You're an American who has never set foot in England, whose athletic success has come at the amateur level and is now being charged with the leadership of a premier football club, despite clearly possessing very little knowledge of the game." And Ted says, "You got a question in there, Trent?" And Trent says, "Yeah, is this a joke?" And actually, he uses the F word right in there. Uh, and everybody laughs. And from that point on, everything with Ted and that press conference goes downhill. Now, this is just kind of one example of this. We're getting a chance to see, we're going to see some more here. From the beginning, their purpose is for him to fail. And we've been in that kind of situation before, right? You have, I have. Probably everybody here has had a situation where somebody else wants them to fail. But have you ever had a situation where the owner is sabotaging you from the beginning? You're brought in to do something as an expert where you know nothing about. There's a complete conspiracy against you, and pretty much everybody is involved, and the media hates you, and they're causing the entire country to hate you. This is an impossible situation. How can NICE overcome this? So from this point on, I'd say we have at least a pretty good level of empathy for Ted, and it just continues to build from there. Now let's go to the layers. And let's go to Rebecca first here. Rebecca has some layers. She has some things going on. And if we just, by the way, if we just looked at maybe the first two, we wouldn't have any idea what the hell's really going on here. It's the third and the fourth that change our view. So layer number one, she acts supportive and positive to Ted's face. And she's doing this pretty much all the way through the first season, just wonderfully supportive and positive, while layer number two, sabotaging Ted constantly from the press conference on. So if we just pause right here, we can see this gives us empathy for Ted. It has us worry about him. It has us worry about what's going to happen in the future. What else is she going to do after she does thing after thing after thing after thing, trap after trap? And then we find out that what's really going on is she's taking revenge on her ex-husband who loved this team. And I think, if I remember correctly, when we find that out, it's like in the second or third episode, there's a picture of him on the wall, and he's surrounded by women, and they're younger women. And, that's what happened to her. But it goes one layer deeper than that. So think about it just for a moment. What do you think the bottom layer is? So here it is. She's a victim of a narcissist. Her husband is an extreme narcissist. He is well loved throughout the country because he owned this team. He is a performer, a showman, and she is his primary target. He is constantly setting her up to fail. So strangely enough, she is doing the same thing to Ted up here. That her husband has been doing to her their whole marriage. And you'll see over and over, almost every time he interacts with her, he acts very, very nice and sweet and friendly. while just shoving a knife into her and twisting over and over and over again. So this is why she's gone to this extreme of trying to take revenge against him. And her strategy for doing it is sabotaging Ted. So this layer causes all the others. She's essentially acting just like her husband up here by acting supportive and positive while doing everything she can to destroy him. And it's the sad thing. This is what happens when people are victims of narcissists. At different times, they have a tendency to take on those patterns or to use those patterns, and that's not who they are. They're just responding to what has happened to them. So there's Rebecca's layers. Here's Ted's, and you see him here in the middle of a breakdown. I think this comes in like episode 7 or 8 of the pilot, or excuse me, of the first season. Ted's layers. First, he's an incredibly optimistic person. I totally believe that about him. That's who he is. And even optimistic people will have difficult times. And his start right off the bat. He's getting a divorce, as in his wife is getting a divorce from him, but he doesn't know why. And it doesn't look to me like either of them are bad people in any way. They just didn't fit together for some reason. And then he has a deep wound that he hasn't faced. And this he will face in the second season. But it causes what's up here. So that's something you can look forward to if you haven't seen the second season yet. It's very interesting, but it's why he's that way in that situation. So inviting obsession number 5. In this show, we're constantly wondering this: is Ted going to survive? Will he learn the game fast enough? Is the media, the fans, and Rebecca going to take him down? And we have positivity on trial, right? And it's like this world needs a shift. We need to actually go back to being better human beings. So in this case, will this overly positive and naive way of looking at life be his downfall, or will it slowly turn the city or the club, the city, and the owner around? And that is absolutely worth considering. It's something that, once you get into the show, even if you're only 2 episodes in, you start rooting for this guy and going, wow, I hope he can maintain. I hope he can survive it. I hope he doesn't turn into what's happening to him. His mission, he loves coaching, helping people become the best versions of themselves. And again, the question is, how's he going to solve this impossible problem without giving up his values? Because the standard thing when people are treated bad is to start responding in the same way. And by the way, my dad was a minister. I'm not religious, but if you look at the Bible, this is what Jesus did. Instead of responding the same way everybody else does, which is to fight back and use the same tactics, it's what Rebecca is doing. Instead of that, Ted is pretty much holding up. So, yeah. And that's what keeps people watching this show. Now, let's just talk about something that's going on for all of us right now, because there is something that's been happening. We all have deserved empathy along the way. The need that's inside this industry that comes after 14 months of being on hold. I was here whenever the last 2 strikes happened, and I'm talking real strikes. One of them was 100 days. We watched all kinds of things that went on, all the people that were out of work, out of business, all that kind of thing. We lost people lose their houses here in our neighborhood that were in the industry. My next door neighbor works as uh, a as somebody who's on the set, running and making sure that the script is covered correctly, that everything is being watched constantly. She's been out of business for most of this 14 months. And on our end, first, it's been hard to watch. Second, it's been hard to watch writers go through it. It's been painful, but it's over. This industry is now finally reopening. And so what that means is this. First, streamers need new content that is high quality. The streamers they were going great guns for the early parts of the pandemic. Everybody was at home watching the streamers. It was like, if you're ever going to buy stock, it should have been right before the pandemic. Uh, and and then what happened along the way was they were out of business. Most of the pandemic production was shut down for almost everybody. And then we went into these strikes. So basically, you and I are sitting there going through trying to find something new, and it's almost impossible. Even though they've got lots of stuff in there we haven't watched, we have no idea what it is. They need new content in order to get back to business as normal. And that's important. And they need it to be high quality. Audiences need new shows that are highly engaging. And I don't know how you're feeling, but every week I'm looking for either something new that people are recommending, which isn't happening very often, or going back and watching something I've already seen. We just went through all the seasons of Game of Thrones. And now we're doing Ted Lasso. So we need new shows that are highly engaging. Managers need writers who can create at this level. And this is the thing. There's a lot of people who say they want to get a manager, they want to get an agent, but they want to keep their writing the same. Don't do that. What you need to do is do everything you can to elevate your writing to the highest level you possibly can to make it absolutely amazing. And then you will get an agent or a manager. And I think this is actually the biggest opportunity we've ever seen. We have the longest strike that I remember was a 100-day strike. This one has gone 4 times that. So there is more need than we have ever seen. And part of your job is to take advantage of that. So let me just say something else having to do with writing TV. When you're creating, the decisions are 10 times more important than the words. I got this from talking with showrunners. I interviewed a whole bunch of showrunners when we were creating this class. And what they were telling me was at the very beginning, they spend all their time working on decisions. It's almost the opposite of what most writers do. Most writers get an idea and then they start writing. The showrunners they'll bring their team together and spend 2 weeks just talking about the decisions, right? And they're talking about the concept. How do you make it a major hook? How do you look deeper in the layers, the intrigue, conspiracies, reveals, right? What could make this episode more interesting, character more interesting, opening scene more interesting, the teaser, structure, whatever it is? How can we build in multiple layers of conflict so that the audience never loses interest? And how can we constantly challenge these characters to their core? Now, this is what, 5 decisions? There are 44 other important decisions that you make having to do with your show. Again, most people try to write their way into it, which has them get connected to the way they wrote it And very often they don't see what's beneath the surface. When we were running contests, when we had TV shows that were presented, I would say 95% of them didn't get below 2 layers deep. Most of the pro scripts that we're seeing are 5 layers deep. So it makes a huge difference. So stay with me for a couple minutes. Let me show you what we've created here that could make a tremendous difference for you. And then I'll give you a special on it because we just want writers to be getting in the door and making things happen at this incredible moment. So this program is designed where even if you've written 3 or 4 pilots and created Bibles and all that kind of thing, you're going to discover something new about your show with every single lesson. That's its whole purpose. Its whole purpose is to have you constantly learning, constantly seeing things beneath the surface. Each of the modules are 10 to 15 lessons long. And so on each one, we take one key thing and we make sure that you go all the way to the point of understanding it at a master level. So module 1, this is about designing your show. It's what the showrunners do at the very beginning. Instead of just writing after you get an idea, they jump in and start making the decisions, right? It's like the decisions sell shows, the writing confirms the deal. So all of that writing that you do, incredibly important because it confirms that you belong on the team, that you should be there, that you are a pro, that you know what you're doing. But it's your decisions that sell the show. If you just jumped into the writing without going to the decisions, very likely you don't have this part. And that's important. Your 50 most important decisions, this is what we're going to be focusing on in module 1. You will be figuring those out. We'll do it basically 3 or 4 at a time. We group them into some areas that makes it really easy for you to be able to find the best possible answer. And we'll give you all kinds of examples so you know what you're doing. Then you need the decisions that make your show great. What are the decisions that are going to cause an audience to keep watching, right? What are the decisions that's going to cause a reader inside the industry to recommend your script to their producer or to their network or streamer, right? And then it's about what decisions specifically will sell that show in 1 or 2 sentences. What could you do? What could you say that you made those decisions early on and the entire show delivers on it? Now, in module 2, now you're going to be creating your TV pitch Bible. And again, most people have a tendency to do this at the very end. We're doing it at the beginning because, again, what we need to make sure that this show really has a chance of selling. And your TV Bible, this is when producers request your script, they request one of 2 things. They either request the pilot or the Bible. One of those 2. And whichever they don't request, if they like the other one, they ask for this one. So if a producer is used to looking at Bibles to make decisions, they will go to that first because they can see exactly what it takes to sell that project. And we did something unique. Most people are creating their Bibles based on what they see online, which pretty much are the old way to do it. So instead of that, what I did was I went to a whole bunch of TV producers that I know, and I asked if I could do an interview about this, and they did. And then I talked to their funding sources. I had a conversation with one funding source where the guy walked me through everything he needed to be able to fund a show, and he told me the exact order he needed it in. So we created our TV Bible based on what the producers and the funding sources need. That gives you a significantly better chance. I was talking with one producer and she said, and this is a major producer, she said, we get all these projects in, we look at them, and the first thing I think is, I'm going to have somebody on my team rewrite that Bible. Now, they're not talking about the pilot. She's talking about the Bible because that has to go to her funding source. And she said, if I have to do that, she goes, almost always it's a no. So this module will change that for you. It'll mean you're handing them something that works for their funding source, and it will immediately increase the chance that you get a deal if you can get into a producer. Then we'll give you the specific criteria of everything that has to be in the Bible. And then we do something that really most people aren't thinking of out there, which is, how do you make your Bible a page turner? I have seen TV Bibles that were even done by pros that were like a second thought, that were something that they clearly did after they wrote the script. They clearly did, not caring. They just wanted to get the Bible done so they could send it in. What we do is kind of the opposite. We stand back and say, how do we make it a page turner? How do we make it something where if they just read any sentence on any page, they're going to go, wow, and then read the whole thing. That's our objective. And this came, by the way, I was trying to sell a show at one point, and I talked with the guy I was working with there. He was the director of development, and he says, listen, my VP is very, very picky. Please make sure whatever you show him is amazing. So I spent an extra 5 days working on that TV Bible, making sure every sentence was great. The VP sat right in front of me, and he opened to the third page, and he did this. He just put his finger down on a paragraph, and then he read it. He hadn't read the first page or the second page. He just did that. And then he looked up and he went, that's actually pretty good. And then he did it again on the 8th page. It was a 9-page Bible. He did it again on the 8th page. And then he came back and said, okay, I'm going to read this. And that changed everything. So this makes a huge difference, writing it with the same kind of care that you would give a script. Module 3 then is about your brilliantly complex pilot outline. There are some people who say they don't outline. Here, just know this. If you're trying to get into a TV writer's room, if you ever hope to, you need to master outlining. And what we did was this. Rather than looking at how everybody else outlines outside of the industry, I went and talked to some showrunners, and I said, what do you need in your outlining? By the way, I ask almost every showrunner I talk to, compare the amount of time you spend on outlining to the amount of time you spend on writing. What would you say it is? Most of them said 4-to-1 or 5-to-1. They said they would spend 3 or 4 days outlining an episode with their entire team, and then they would give it to somebody, one of the people in there, to write it in the next 2 days. Now, if you think about that, let's say it's 3 days times 6 people versus 2 days by one person. That's pretty big. They spend more effort outlining episodes, and there's a reason why, because that's what makes the writing great. So this is really important. We do a different kind of outline than most people. Most people, their outline is them trying to put as many details as they can. That's not our focus. Our focus is building in depth, intrigue, and the key needs for that pilot or episode. Our objective is to build, when we come to depth, to build 5 layers deep. And you're going to build that into your outline, that every scene is going to be essentially written in multiple layers of depth. So when you get to the point of actually writing, you've already got something incredible, right? If you have a great outline that equals a great episode. If you have an average outline, guess what? It doesn't end up being great. So this makes a huge difference. That brings us to module 4. Now we're writing, finally. But here's what you need to know. Because you did the outlining, at this point, every single page is going to be intriguing, right? Every page is going to be something that, again, if they just said, let's just throw up a dice and it comes down page 10. Let's say you have a 16-sided dice or something. It comes down to page 10. And if they just read even, half of page 10, they'll go, oh my God, this is incredible. If they read half of page 2, they'll do the same thing. Any page they read, they should be intrigued. They should be engaged. They should be going, wow, this writing is amazing. And again, that's what happens if you start with a great outline and then you go through this process. The purpose of your pilot is to launch your entire show. So it's not like any other episode. You need great care with this particular episode. And it's got to create the binge-worthy experience from the very beginning. And this, again, if you've ever had anybody say to you, hey, you should watch this show, but make sure you watch 3 episodes because then you'll fall in love with it. It's like, why do we have to wait 3 episodes? That, once you understand this, you won't do that. You don't, and especially when you're giving a script to a producer, you don't want to say, but hey, if you read 3 episodes, then you'll like it. You want that very first episode to blow them away. And again, our pilots deliver, and every episode delivers on 5 different levels, much, much deeper than feature films and much deeper than a lot of the ones I've seen in contest. So marketing to producers is module 5. Once you've done everything up to this point, you have the exact model to be able to write every episode from that point and make them the most compelling things anybody's ever read. That's our objective. So when you get here, now we're talking about what does it take to get things in the door. So we're going to give you 4 different great pitches. You'll learn how to do each one of these. Each one is different from the other, and it meets a specific experience. Like you hear about the elevator pitch. Well, a lot of times when people explain the elevator pitch, they really think it means having somebody trapped in an elevator and you tell them your whole story. That's not what an elevator pitch is. The people in this industry who are great at elevator pitches, they could see you for 15 seconds, say one thing, and you will follow them out to their car, asking them if they'll send you their pilot. That's what a great pitch does. It is designed to hook the producer. It is designed to cause them to be so interested and engaged that they pretty much have to read your pilot. So you'll learn exactly how to do that for the 4 main situations that you will find yourself in. It's not always a 5-minute pitch. That's one of the 4. There are 3 different levels at which you're going to pitch, so you need to know all of them, or 4 different levels. So then we'll talk about how to get into the door. How do you actually get somebody to look at your project? How do you get contact information? What do you say when you talk to them? How do you present yourself? Things like that. What gets you and your show indoors? And finally, exactly how to pitch it. Where are you pitching from? Who are you as you pitch? Now, I told you I'll give you a special on this. So this program, it's a 5-month-long program. You are going to elevate pretty much every part of your writing during this program. If you are somebody who has written 3 or 4 pilots, excellent. I promise you, you will come out of this and you will go back and rewrite most of them. You'll see them at a completely different level. We had a guy who told us he wrote the perfect pilot. And he wanted me to read it right then. I said, I'll tell you what, go through the whole program at the end. I'll read it if you still think it's the perfect pilot. We got to the end and he said, I asked him and he goes, I found over 35 things I needed to improve in that pilot. Because basically he was writing really good, but he wasn't writing great. So this can make that kind of difference. Now, take this class if first you want to create the best project of your life so far. And that's where we're going. That's what this whole thing is about. Whatever you've written so far, you are about to write a script that is better. And I'm not saying anything bad about the previous scripts. I'm just saying that the development team we had almost all pros on that team. We had people who were working at the studio that took pitches. We had a VP, that was his job. We came up with some incredible stuff here. This is going to help you double or triple the quality of your writing, even if you're already doing really well. And it'll give you the tools to write for streamers, which will give you a much, much better chance inside the industry. And finally, you're going to write a great TV series. That's the job here. Now, let's do this. As soon as you sign up, we have two pre-lessons. You'll get one immediately, how to create a great TV concept. If you don't already have a great concept, go through this process and you will come up with one. If you already have something that you want to write, super, that's okay. Still go through this process because this is a critical skill for your future success. And then see if maybe you came up with something better. If you want to still write the thing that you want to write, go right ahead. Totally up to you. You can, I recommend doing this with a brand new script, brand new project, because that will give you the freedom to be able to learn at a higher level. But if you need to bring in a script you already have, you can. The start date on this program, let's see, it is September 3rd. That gives you a month to brainstorm some concepts. And because it's September 3rd and I want people to be able to benefit from this situation that's going on in this industry, I will give you a pretty amazing special, which I don't think we've done before. For the first 10 people, the normal price is $12.99. For the first 10, you can get in for $6.49, which is half price. And again, we're doing that because I want you to be able to take advantage of the situation that's out there right now. And at the same time, I want to have as many people as possible that are bringing in amazing projects into this industry. So if you'd like to join us for that, just write down this link, bit.ly/BWTV-order. If you need a payment plan, write this one down. You can get in for $130 a month for 6 months. That one's bit.ly, bit.ly/BWTV-payment plan. No capitals, no spaces. Just pick the one that's best for you, write it down, and then put it in your browser where you normally put a web address. Click return and you're in. So I promise you, this is going to be an amazing class. You are going to learn things that will change how you write from this point on. It'll improve your TV. First, you'll come out with a great TV pilot. But second, it'll improve every episode you write from this point on. It'll also improve any features that you write. If you are writing books, going through this process will give you some new things that you can add to the books you're writing so that you're writing those at an even higher level. And again, right now, for the first 10, instead of $12.99, you get in at $6.49 or $130 a month for 6 months. So all you got to do is pick the link that works best for you, write it down, put it in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and come join us. Last thing I'd like to say on this, this may be the most opportune time for you to break into this industry and for you to have the success you want. And if you're not just trying to break in, it might just be contest. We had a lady who went through this program. Her name was Helena Darrett. She had never won a contest before. She did everything we told her in this program. She created a pretty amazing TV pilot. She entered it in the final draft big break contest. Ended up getting first place. She beat about 2,000 other writers. And it was because she had gone through this program and done everything that we presented. At that point, she wanted to get a manager. It turned out 2 managers read her script as the final judges. Both of them contacted her. She didn't have to call them. Both of them contacted her, and they both wanted to work with her. So I walked her through doing a set of interviews with them for her to determine which manager she wanted to work with. It wasn't their choice, it was hers because of the quality of her writing. She found the manager she wanted to work with. The manager loved her writing. He signed her immediately, and they've been working together ever since. So if that's something that you want in your future, this can possibly make that happen. All you got to do is just come in and just give it your absolute best. If you, again, if you were looking for the best possible timing ever, right this moment is it. So first, I wish you the best on your writing, and I wish you the absolute best on making something happen now. And if you join us for this program, you will have a significantly better chance. So with that, it was great talking with you all. I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the class. Bye-bye, everyone.